In this presentation, we'll be talking about Roman numeral analysis. So, music is a physical phenomenon. It actually takes place in space. It involves the vibration of waves, of air. However, it's intangible. We can't touch it. And because of that, it can sometimes be difficult to talk about it because it's this invisible thing, and yet it carries a lot of meaning. So one way that we can convey meaning to each other is through symbol systems. And different cultures have created a variety of different symbol systems to represent musical sounds. These systems, of course, include notated music. We have records of this reaching back to Babylon, and it likely existed even before that. There are also syllable systems. This ranges from the European solfege style of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, to the South Indian conical system for rhythm, to the Scottish cantrock, which denotes types of ornamentation used in the keel more or big music of the Great Highland bagpipes. And there are also analytical systems, which often serve as contextual meaning within a governing musical system. And that's what we'll be focusing on in this presentation. The analytical systems that we use today to contextualize music of the Common Practice era, namely Roman numerals. In the study of Common Practice era music, as well as music that draws on this tradition, Roman numerals are used as a shorthand to represent a harmony that is sounding at a given moment in the music. Roman numerals are used for this purpose for two very specific reasons. They can easily be differentiated from the Arabic numerals, which have other uses in this style of music. For instance, they're used for scale degrees, like 6 with the caret on top. And they're also used for figured bass and voice leading indications. So using Roman numerals helps us differentiate between those. They also have an uppercase and lowercase version, which help to differentiate chord quality. Now, it's good to become familiar with Roman numerals before we even start applying them to music. And not everyone is familiar with them, and that's okay. We'll only be using the first 7 numerals in the system. We won't go higher than that because they'll be linked to scale degrees. And in a diatonic scale, there are only 7 scale degrees to work with. It's worth noting that some analytical traditions use only the uppercase versions of the Roman numerals. For our purposes, we'll be using both uppercase and lowercase, each for specific reasons. So in the chart below, we see the uppercase Roman numerals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which look like I, and so that's 1, 2, and 3. That's fairly straightforward because there's 1, 2, and 3 elements there. And then we have 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are based on the Roman numeral that looks like a V, which equates to a 5. When we add one of those i's before the V, then it subtracts 1 from that 5. So 1 before the V is a 4. Likewise, if we add an I after that V-looking symbol, then it adds 1 to it. So a V with a 1 after it is 6. A V with 2 i's after it is a 7. So this is all that we have to concern ourselves with. I, V, V, VI, VII. No, never refer to them that way, but that's how they look. These translate to the Arabic equivalents that you see below, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's worth knowing how this works, but ultimately you'll be using these so frequently that you'll probably come to know them just as secondhand. The lowercase versions are in that middle line, and you'll notice that they look just like lowercase i's and lowercase v's. And again, we'll be using those to denote chord quality in just a moment. So in the analysis of Common Practice era music, a Roman numeral is used to represent a chord. And specifically, it's used to represent a chord whose root is the same scale degree that is the Arabic numeral equivalent of the Roman numeral. I realize that's a lot of steps. So let's work through this one at a time. Here is the key of D major. Here we have a D, F sharp, and A. We have our tonic chord. This is based on scale degrees 1, 3, and 5. So 1 is the root. We know it's the root because the others are thirds stacked above it. So scale degree 1 is the root. Now to figure out which Roman numeral we should use for that, it's the Roman numeral that is equivalent to the Arabic number that is the root scale degree. So the root is scale degree 1. That means we're going to use Roman numeral 1. And that's what we have here. Also note that anytime we use a Roman numeral, we also want to indicate the key. A Roman numeral means nothing without a key. It is contextualized to within a scale. So whenever you are writing a Roman numeral, indicate the key along with it. Uppercase and lowercase numerals are used to show a difference in chord quality. Uppercase numerals are used for chords with a major third between the root and the third of the chord. This means that major triads and augmented triads would both use uppercase numerals. In the case of augmented triads, a plus is added after the Roman numeral. For instance, 3 plus would be an augmented 3 chord. Lowercase numerals are used for chords with a minor third between the root and the third of the chord. This means that minor triads and diminished triads would both use lowercase numerals. In the case of diminished triads, a circle is added after the Roman numeral. For instance, 2 diminished. Now let's see these in the context of a scale. Here we have a group of chords built on the D major scale. Here we have the different chords built on the progressing upwards scale degrees. This one is built on scale degree 1, scale degree 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So this represents the chords in order, and we also have here the Roman numerals that go with them. Here we have our D major chord, and as we saw before, this would be represented by a uppercase Roman numeral 1. The chord that's built on the second scale degree is E minor, E, G, B. Therefore, we use a lowercase 2, and we use that 2 because, of course, it's built on the second scale degree. The chord built on the third scale degree gets a Roman numeral 3. It is a minor chord, F sharp, A, C sharp, and so we use lowercase. 4 is major, G, B, D, and it's built on the fourth scale degree, so we use an uppercase 4. 5 is also major, A, C sharp, E, so we use an uppercase 5. The chord that's built on scale degree 6 is minor, B, D, F sharp, so we use a lowercase 6. Here's the one that's different, scale degree 7, C sharp, E, G is diminished. C sharp to E is a minor third, E to G is a minor third, so we have a diminished triad there. So we put a 7 and we put the diminished sign next to it. And then we're back to 1, and that's major again. Note that even though these pitches appear in different parts of the register between those two 1 chords, they're still 1 chords. All we're interested in here are the pitch classes themselves. The Roman numerals act as a summary of the pitch classes that are there. So this is the pattern that we will see in major scales. 1 is major, 2 and 3 are minor, 4 and 5 are major, 6 is minor, 7 is diminished, and back to 1, which is major. So get used to those and get used to seeing those in the context of diatonic major mode music. Now, take a deep breath because the minor mode will look slightly more complicated. The upper line represents the chords that we will see most often in the context of the minor mode. Note here we are in D minor. I have indicated the key. Again, anytime that we have that we are using Roman numerals, we want to indicate the key because they are contextualized within the context of a tonic. So here again we're going to build these up, and I'm going to look at the top line first. The bottom line here are some exceptions. You will also notice that some of the chords in this top line make use of the harmonic minor scale. And the harmonic minor scale gets its name from this very tendency, the fact that harmonies in minor tend to be built on the harmonic minor scale. There's one exception that we'll see. Here we have the chord that's built on the tonic on scale degree 1. It is a minor chord, D, F, A, so we use a lowercase 1. Here's the chord built on scale degree 2, E, G, B flat. E to G is a minor third, G to B flat is a minor third, therefore that is a diminished triad. So we have a 2 because it's built on the second scale degree. It is a lowercase 2 because E to G is a minor third. We also have to denote that it is a diminished triad, so we put that circle next to it. Here we are, this is the chord that doesn't fit in the harmonic minor scale, and in fact we're going to see that 3 is kind of an awkward chord in the common practice era style anyway. It's sort of ambiguous, and we see that ambiguity here. Here we have F, A, and C. It's built on scale degree 3, and therefore we have that large Roman numeral 3 there, and it's a major chord, which is why it's uppercase. F, A, C being major. Now we hop over to the chord built on scale degree 4, G, B flat, D. That is a minor chord, so we use a lowercase 4. We hop over here to the chord built on scale degree 5, and here's where we're using our harmonic minor scale. We are making sure to raise that leading tone. 99.9% of the time, when you are working with a 5 chord or a 7 chord in the minor mode, we are going to want to raise that leading tone. And you'll often see that raised when you are analyzing. So assume, it's always difficult to assume, but assume that if you're working in the minor mode that you're probably going to see that. But there are some exceptions. So here we have the chord built on scale degree 5. A up to C sharp is a major third, so it is a capital 5 there. Now we're on to 6, B flat, D, F, and that is, of course, a major chord, so we have the capital 6 there. Now we go on to 7, C sharp, E, G. C sharp to E is a minor third, E to G is a minor third. That makes a diminished triad, so we use a lowercase 7 with the diminished symbol next to it. Note that 5 and 7 are going to be the same as the major mode. 5 is going to be a major chord, 7 is going to be a diminished triad. These other chords have changed. Major 1 has switched to minor 1. Minor 2 has switched to 2 diminished. Minor 3 has switched to major 3. Major 4 has switched to minor 4. Minor 6 has switched to major 6. So there's some sort of inverting of chord qualities that's going on. It's just something to remember, but most of the time we're going to see 5 and 7 be the same as in the major mode because we want that raised leading tone. In common practice era music, that's going to be one of the things that helps point us back to tonic and create the structural functions that help build that common practice era style sound. So that's the basic chords that you're going to see in the minor scale. I do want to talk about a few exceptions which you will see every once in a while. So let's go through these one at a time. It is possible to have a 3 augmented chord. F to A is a major third, A to C sharp is a major third. So that gives us 3 augmented. It is uncommon, and we'll see it often used as a substitute for the 5 chord, the major 5 chord. We do sometimes see a minor 5 chord built using either the natural minor form of the scale or the descending melodic minor form of the scale. And it's uncommon, and it's usually harmonizing that descending melodic minor form. That's usually when we see that used the most. It is possible to have a 6 diminished, but it is very rare. Typically found harmonizing the ascending melodic minor scale, where we have scale degree 6 being raised. And it is possible to have a major 7, which is uncommon and usually found in harmonic sequences. So these bottom ones are possible, some of them less probable than others, but this top row are going to be the most common. common usage of Roman numerals and chords in the context of the minor scale. Very briefly, we should talk about Roman numerals and texture. And we'll be using Roman numerals regardless of the texture. They are a harmonic summary of what is going on. So in other words, a chord could have closed spacing, where the notes other than the bass appear as spaced as close as possible. That's what we have here in the first example. Here we are in C minor. Again, I'm using Roman numerals, so I'm always indicating the key. Here we are in C minor, and we have a 5 chord, G, B, D, built on scale degree 5, and it's major. And here we have the upper 3 members of the chord, B, D, and G, spaced as closely as possible. We're in close spacing there. That's a 5 chord. It could be an open spacing, where you can insert another chord tone between the upper voices. Here we have B, G, and D. I could insert a D here, I could insert a B here. And we could still call this a 5 chord, even though the spacing is different. And even if it's different doubling, here we have the G an octave higher, here we have a bunch of different other notes doubled, and we can still call that a 5 chord. It is, again, a harmonic summary that is interested in the pitch classes that are there. The pitch classes, if we make a pitch catalog, are G, B, and D in each of these instances. It's going to be the same if it's rhythmically activated, if the bass voice has some rhythmic activation to it. For instance, like in an Alberti bass passage. Here we are, we see G, B, D. Everything is G, B, D in that measure. Again, it's the pitch classes that matter. Here, though we do change the bass note, and we will see that changing the bass note in a chord can change its function later. Here it seems to be indicating that the strong beats, or the strong parts of the beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, all have a G there. And that indicates a sort of grounding to that member of the chord, the root. Same thing in this last measure, where we have this low G that acts as a grounding member of the chord. So all of these are 5 chords. G, B, D, again, concerned with the pitch classes and not necessarily where they appear in the texture. So why use Roman numerals anyway? It's a good question. We could feasibly refer to all chords based on their root and quality. For instance, in that last passage, we could just say G major, and that would give us a good amount of information about their sound. But ultimately, we'll be using Roman numerals so that we can access the structural function of the harmony. That is, how it is used when it's contextualized by common practice era harmonic practice. And we'll see that certain harmonies will tend to progress to others, and that some will have influence over key areas in certain parts of the piece.